Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin. Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, 25 years serial tech entrepreneur. My new book, Fail Hard, Win Big, came out here in July of 2025. This is my story of having 30 ventures, 20 failures with 10 wins. The common element of all of my ventures was building custom software to make operations better, to create unique client experiences, and to raise enterprise value. Now I'm the CEO of Sonatafy Technology, a custom nearshore software development firm. And today we are joined by a very special guest, Chris Horvat, who happens to be the CTO of Sonatafy Technology. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate the introduction, and I can say that having read the book, it is a fantastic read on how to leverage your failures to be better at other organizations. So that's great.
For a long time, Chris, I was embarrassed the fact that I had 20 business failures. And, taking a step back, 30 ventures, 20 failures, but 10 wins. If I was a baseball player, that would give me a 333 batting average. I think that's Hall of Fame. And fortunately, I've had more. The wins have far outweighed the losses, but it's been a fun journey. This book is my way of. I go pretty personal in the book. I talk about crooks I've dealt with. I've talked about specific situations. I got quite personal in this book of the good, the bad, and the ugly, with the sole goal of providing value to people who have either failed or looking to start their own ventures, or somebody who needs a good kick in the ass. So, Chris, you are a former client of Sonatafy Technology. We are honored to have you as CTO. Walk our listeners through the journey of your career and what's led you to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been in technology for a little over 20 years at this point. Really cut my teeth in the banking industry, then moved into the broadcast, advertising, and satellite distribution tech space, and from there into the freight tech space, then into cybersecurity tech, and now finally into what I call people.
That's quite diverse, touching a lot of areas, to say the least, and a lot of critical areas.
Yes, absolutely. And I've enjoyed every aspect of it because it's brought different challenges that have helped me develop my skill set as a technology leader. So when you asked, would I be interested in joining an organization to help build the people tech side and leverage those skill sets that I've developed over this long career to help our clients achieve some of the same successes that I've been able to achieve in those different industries, I was thoroughly excited. So thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for having me join the team.
Well, awesome. Let's talk, Chris, I think that the CTO role, number one, if you're an engineer, if you're looking to build your career, you're looking to rise up the ranks. To me, CTO is cream of the crop, the ultimate goal, reaching the Hall of Fame. With that said, CTO is probably one of the tougher jobs out there. And you look at the past couple of years and how volatile the tech market's been. CTOs don't have a very long shelf life at companies. They're blamed for everything. It's a tough role. How have you overcome the diversity of the role?
Yeah, that's a great point. I recall recently participating in a roundtable around the tech industry in Arizona and some of the hiring challenges. And that was a key theme, was a lot of individuals who had previously held CTO roles that were struggling to find opportunities in this new market. And a lot of it is really the new mandate for the CTO. The modern CTO can't just be solving engineering problems. They need to be solving business problems. And this is where I think a lot of we'll call it legacy CTO mentality kind of come from. CTOs are no longer just system architects. They're expected to influence top of line growth, retention, and unit economics. The technical strategies that they come up with really need to tie back to business KPIs like customer acquisition costs, lifetime value, and go-to-market speed. These are the things that organizations care about in this new efficiency-focused, AI-driven, rapid market development. Modern CTOs sit at the intersection of all this tech, product, and revenue, and they need to recognize ways that they need to bring those skills to bear to touch each of those areas of that intersection.
Now,
So, for example,
do you think,
go ahead.
Chris, so, the typical CTO is a genius engineer that grows up through the ranks. Then when you make that switch to CTO, now you're educating these non-technical, often pompous C-level executives. You got CFOs breathing down your throat of, why can't you make it work with the cheapest resources in the world? I mean, it brings a lot of new challenges to the table, as you're saying, well outside solving the tech and engineering challenges.
Yeah, you absolutely need to be a people person, a finance person, and a technologist. And you need to whip those all together. I will be the first to say early in my career, I was that jack of all trades and didn't understand how to properly scale myself. And like you, that was one of my big failures, is realizing, okay, I can't be that technologist anymore. I really need to start developing some of these skills with other individuals and essentially create a line of succession around the team that I surrounded myself with so that they can take on some of the more technical aspects with me providing some guidance, but really tying that strategy together for the corporate folks. So yes, absolutely being that mouthpiece to communicate very technical ideas to non-technical C-level executives, and then leveraging things like what we do at Sonatafy to help create efficiency, reduce cost, drive velocity. One of the great things that I think our organization brings to the table that not a lot of organizations realize is teams that help own business problems while being significantly less costly than onshore resources and better equipped to own the business problems than offshore resources. And being able to create that mix, I kind of call it the team domain alignment. So the closer you are to the MVP, the closer your team needs to be to your product, to your marketing, to your sales. And the only way to deliver that is to have teams that are in your time zone. I think COVID has really taught us that they don't necessarily need to be in office anymore, as long as that they understand the business problem that they're solving. And so being able to leverage those those resources as a CTO and bring that to bear starts to really help other parts of the organization, like the CFO.
Let's talk about the developer market today. There's certainly, all you got to do is open up any newspaper and, you see dire straits and developers will be outdated by AI and won't be needed. I know I call bullshit on that. I know you share similar views. With that said, though, every developer out there now, they're expected to be like a 5x productivity developer. They need to be using AI. They need to be more productive. There's zero tolerance for junior or mid-level developers. There, even what I'd call senior developers, people want principal level that are going to own problems, solve challenges, find stuff to do, not sit there and wait for instructions. That's developers really got to step up their game in this environment. What's your take?
Absolutely. There's a couple of key areas that I see in that statement that you just made. It's product ownership over sprint ownership. Developers and the team that you trust, you can't just outsource your product or your vision. You need developers to feel like co-founders of the solution, not just ticket takers. They need to be able to execute with context, because if they don't have that context, it's rework delays and disengaged teams. And this is where that principal concept comes from. I don't think it's necessarily junior, senior, mid versus the concept of, do your developers understand your business domain and the problem that you're asking them to solve? Because all of those developers can be high functioning developers once they understand that problem and that they are embedded in the problem and not just the backlog that they're working in. This creates empowered teams that outperform managed ones every single time. I've seen it time and time again. When it comes to AI, it's not a silver bullet, it's a lever. AI won't replace any developer. I've seen it, I've used it myself, I've taught other organizations how to use it to accelerate velocity. But developers who do know how to leverage AI will definitely replace the ones that don't. Copilots and LLMs reduce boilerplate. So sorry.
That's my take on it. If you're not using AI as a developer right now, which your engineering organization has to make sure it's enabled you to do it, because you don't just
Yeah.
want to be throwing code in open free versions, and that's a good way to get fired, sued. But if you're not using AI, you're going to be replaced by someone who is productively using AI.
We see it. Teams that build with AI are learning exponentially faster than those that are waiting for more mature solutions. AI shifts the frontier from productivity to experimentation speed. And we've seen that with some of the tools that even we're using at our organization, Steve, with tools like Lovable to help on rapid prototyping for our customers. Being able to give our customers a rapid prototype in as little as 2 to 7 days that's fully functional that they can go to market and test with. It is a differentiator that I've yet to see at other organizations. And it's really because of AI tools and our adoption of them that is allowing us this capability.
Well, the biggest mistake to that point of rapid prototyping that we see organizations, startups make all the time is they spend way too much time, money, and effort in an MVP that they haven't fully tested, that they haven't gotten market buy-in, that they haven't truly spent the right amount of time with the users and understand what their needs are going to be. And this concept of rapid prototyping has been a big thing for us, as you said, using AI tools. And, maybe we're a little biased, but the no code, low code tools out there are so limited. You could build something, you could get something up quickly, but that's not going to scale.
Absolutely.
And so, and the skill sets you've brought to the organization have helped us kind of master this rapid prototyping of people, have a clickable prototype within 7 days, a fully functional one within 30 days. Use that to get the market buy-in, to look at what refrain, and that as a model to build on. I wish I would have known that years ago to take that type of approach, but I think kind of the rise and the sophistication of AI has changed the game on that.
Absolutely. And it's not just for organizations that are building their first product. It's really for organizations that are even looking to build additional products or add-ons to their existing product line. Yeah, no. All right.
Keep going.
Yeah. So NLP tools like the ones that we use produce functional code. And in the hands of an experienced developer, like the resources that we bring to bear, they actually create scalable prototypes. And that code goes into a GitHub repository. And then that code can be iterated on. So it's not just a drag and drop or low code, no code tool. It's a tool that is producing code that can then be used by developers to build on top of. This can allow founders to explore ideas and test value propositions before investing in full scale and full stack builds. And
so,
then it
Chris,
reduces waste.
Why do you think it's important that our prototype approach is creating the actual code in GitHub versus just using a no code, low code tool? What would you say the benefit is?
Off that code if you like how it's operating. With other tools that just produce drag and drop content, it's hosted in their platform. You don't have access to the source code. You're essentially tied to whatever that platform is producing. Not to cachet to any one organization, but there's an organization out there that's around vibe coding. And yes, they are popular, but because it's drag and drop. But it's running on their platform. So once you get your prototype up and running, you either have to rebuild it from scratch if you want to move it to some other architecture or make it scalable, or you just have to continue to pay for their service to continue to host your platform.
Gotcha. Well, great points. Great points. Let's switch gears. What's your take on open source right now and the good, the bad, and the ugly of that?
Yeah, open source and thought leadership at organizations build trust. If your engineering organization isn't sharing what it knows, it's invisible and forgettable. Public artifacts, including blog posts, GitHub repos, conference talks, these increase visibility and trust in both your product and in the code that your product is made of. CTOs need to start thinking like CMOs when they're building team and tech credibility. Buyers and recruiters gravitate towards organizations that teach and contribute. Our teams help elevate technical branding through our own open source projects. We have a couple of projects out there around microservice architecture that we're helping bring to our clients, as well as scalable AI driven automation for QA, where it's breaking down these hour-long automation tests into bite-sized chunks and creating multiple virtual machines to complete all of those tests in minutes instead of hours.
Let's go back to a comment you made. CTOs need to think like CMOs. So there's another hat CTOs need to think of there. Expand on that.
CMOs, I brand product awareness for organizing. CTOs need to be involved in that process as much as possible. There is agile framework that's not just about engineering classes. Called agile. Actually, hey, this the next level specifically focus on concept agile release teams. The organization is part of the delivery, including the marketing, reducing the market.
Chris, you mentioned that CTOs need to also think like CMOs. Yet another hat to wear. Expand on that if you would.
Absolutely. So CMOs own the market and branding of both the business and the product. CTOs need to be involved in that process. There is a scaled agile framework. It's actually called scaled agile framework that encapsulates this concept that the entire organization is part of the release process for any aspect of a product. They call this agile release train, and that the marketing and sales parts of the organization are just as responsible for the release of the product as the engineering team is responsible for building that product. And being able to tie that with various things like feature flags to control release from deployment, blue-green deployments for those of the CTOs who understand limiting blast radius when you're producing new things out there. These are the things that you are tying as a technologist that help protect the brand and market capabilities of the product that you're producing, and build that awareness of what your organization is. Not just delivering product as quickly as possible, but delivering quality product that your marketing organization is comfortable debuting to potential customers.
Gotcha. No, that's yet another challenge for the CTOs out there, to say the least, to stay on top of things. You know, Chris, as you look at being a CTO and halfway through 2025, which it's been an interesting year, what would you say are the biggest challenges CTOs are facing right now?
Well, yeah, kind of coming back full circle. Yeah, I think with all of the disruption in the talent market, it's not really a talent crisis, it's a skills mismatch. And I think, organizations need to start thinking about their talent strategy around building capability density, not headcount. And even from a cost perspective, I think too many dev organizations are either overstaffed or underleveraged or misaligned talent. And what matters most is the concentration of relevant experience and seniority. Yeah, there's an individual associated with one of the biggest payment platforms out there who said, capability density is the new metric of team effectiveness. And we really try and bring that to bear at Sonatafy. Our nearshore staff, they're not just coders, they're system thinkers. They're polyglots who understand different aspects of the entire software process, and they're collaborators who are primarily focused on delivering impact. And that's what too many engineering organizations are forgetting. And that's how you end up with significant burn that doesn't produce the results that your investors are looking for, or your stockholders.
So, Chris, you've led some very large engineering teams throughout your ventures. Have you seen an optimal mix of ones you should have as full-time employees versus ones that are full-time contractors? And what's the right balance of making sure the core knowledge is being kept by full-time employees versus full-time contractors? Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I argue documentation should be the owner of knowledge. Any organization that's not devoting significant resources towards documenting their product, the engineering and architecture behind it, and really building for chaos, they're not doing the right things. That frees up your ability to focus on building teams that deliver that impact. And where I have found the most success in my career with building high impact teams is really having a close cadre of full-time individuals focused on what I call the skunk works projects, the really experimental bleeding edge stuff. It's not necessarily going to go into production, but it may inform production architecture and capabilities down the road. Then you're really looking at your implementation and execution teams. These are the ones responsible for the majority of the impact. And this is where you have the opportunity to develop the most amount of efficiency with leveraging remote resources, nearshore resources. Because as long as they understand and own the problem again, and they're bought into the vision of what their team's domain is aligned to, they're going to be able to execute. And as long as your product owner and product manager is able to sell that to that team effectively, and there's no ambiguity for them, they are going to deliver time and again, and they're going to deliver quickly. They do vertical slicing, which allows you to deliver demonstratable chunks of product functionality in shorter periods. That's another area that I kind of focus on. And then there's keep the lights on. Keep the lights on are your legacy products that are approaching end of life that you can absolutely start to move further afield as far as your team structure is concerned. But the focus should always be on teams owning their business, whatever that may be.
So, Chris, this is officially episode 54 of this podcast. I have
Congrats.
talked to 53 other CTOs on similar conversations. And I think you just gave one of the best answers of anyone I've talked to thus far. Really, around the core knowledge should not be with individuals, should be documented. And if there's anything with the age of AI and what it's bringing to engineers and development teams, it's ease of documenting your processes, your key knowledge. I know you're the CTO of Sonatafy, so I'm biased as the CEO of Sonatafy, but I just thought that was an incredible answer that nobody else to date in 53 episodes took that route. So I like that a lot. And that's an important thing. Any organization, you don't want 1 or 2 or 10 individuals to be able to hold you hostage.
Yeah, you are architecting for resilience here as a technology officer. It's not just about uptime. You need to consider your resources as equally important in the continuity of your business as the infrastructure that your product is running on. Uptime is reactive. Resilience is proactive, adaptive, and iterative. And if you've documented everything, if your code is all infrastructure as code, then any person should be able to click a button and immediately restore your systems to full functionality. This is the concept behind chaos engineering. And resilient systems have this observability, this documentation, this graceful degradation, and the rapid recovery built into it. And so making sure that's built in repositories with the concept of versioning behind them. This is the key importance that makes really truly, we'll call elite CTOs from just your everyday CTO. They recognize that they should be building something that can outlive not only their tenure, but the tenure of all the people underneath them. Because you can't at any point consider any one of your resources to be permanent. They may have other interests. Yeah, you don't want your knowledge to leave with your people.
No, and that's a great point. Chris, what's one brutal lesson that you wish you would have learned earlier in your career that you know now from fighting the good fights out there?
Well, I would say it's kind of twofold, but the primary one is that CTOs, we don't scale infinitely. We need to be able to build and leverage the individuals around us to be able to handle the things that aren't purely strategic. To be able to translate your strategy into tactical execution for your team members, yeah, you need to architect things so they don't become problems later. I see too many organizations kind of focus on time to market too much at the expense of scalability and growth. And then I see these teams get mired down in rework because they reach a point of criticality with their product functionality that they can't get past. And now the platform or the product is so big that it's like steering an oil tanker. The decision between 2 days and 2 weeks made early on in the product life cycle around architecture has now turned into a 6-month problem to turn that ship. So tech choices should reflect your team structure and your team's vibe and their maturity. And they should be free to make those decisions without consequence and be able to inform your roadmap that way.
So Chris, if you had a friend or a family member who is young, smart, their goal is to be a CTO as part of their career, what advice would you tell them?
Well,
Run, don't do it.
No, absolutely not. Being a CTO is one of the most rewarding experiences if you love both being on the technical side, the business side, and the people side. And you need to develop those skills. But the job of the modern CTO is not just to build the right thing, it's to help businesses discover what to build, how fast, why, and with who. And that's why I've enjoyed coming to Sonatafy, because we were built to deliver on that, no matter what stage an organization is in. And so being able to develop those skills here and continue to grow those skills is something that I'm excited about. And it's something that I think other CTOs and people interested in becoming CTOs need to focus on. Build those people skills, build that business knowledge, build the understanding of the organizational problems outside of just the technical scope so that you can craft your strategy around it, and then learn how to scale yourself.
All great points. And as we're halfway through 2025 and it's been like a seesaw in our economy and what's going on and what companies are doing with projects, startups are getting funded, and I don't think there's any startup that does not have a tech enabled component to it right now. That's basically everybody.
Yep.
Everybody who's going to get money raised. Let me put it that way.
It's table stakes.
Yes. And, we often see that there'll be some tech savvy CEOs, but that they often early stage startups maybe get 3 to 5 million of seed money. They try to go out without a CTO, and it's tough because CTOs, as we've talked about, it's a tough job. They're in huge demand. They're expensive resources. And, one of the things that you've championed through Sonatafy as you've been part of the team is our fractional CTO services and the benefit that can have to organizations that have raised money, but are trying to do it without a CTO.
Absolutely. And this is the part where a lot of organizations struggle early on. Again, making those architectural decisions that hurt them down the road, that end up costing more capital because they made the wrong kind of decision without the technical guidance. Using your book as an example of the failures that CTOs like myself have experienced and that have taught us, okay, that's not the right approach to solve this particular problem. Early on in my career, ran into so many problems building monolithic architectures because it's easy to build. You have one code repository to maintain. As long as the developers aren't working in the same space, there's not a lot of integration requirements around it. The challenge is that once you get customers on that type of platform, making changes iteratively a year down the road become infinitesimally or infinitely harder at that point. And that's where I see organizations really struggle at the early stages because they don't know those failures because they're not yet there. Same with what to build their platform on. A lot of organizations will kind of just leverage whatever's given to them. Like I said, some of these low code, no code solutions, they'll build these prototypes
Mhm.
and they'll take them to market thinking, okay, this will serve my customers. And yeah, they're not really treating that as a beta prototype or a prototype to get customer feedback. They're treating that as a live production instance. And then all of a sudden, the cracks start to show. And one of two things occurs on those kind of platforms. Either you can't build for scale, or the scale starts increasing so exponentially in terms of cost that you're rapidly outpacing what little revenue you're generating from your customer base because you're just burning through it on compute or database resources. And
Well,
that's what I usually
let's
see.
face it, Chris, it's hard. You can't learn this stuff from a class. You can't learn this
Absolutely.
stuff from a book. You got to do it wrong enough, long enough to figure out how to do it right. And
Yeah.
having the right team members is absolutely key to that. Man, I wish I could say it's sad to say how little you learn from your successes, but how much you learn from your
From your
failures.
failures.
That's just kind of how it is.
Hmm.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for getting uncensored with us today. You brought up some excellent points. I'm honored to have you as part of the Sonatafy team as we're attacking the industry, as we're helping clients change rapidly, adopt technology, build smarter software. You're just a key team member and partner for that. As we wrap up the show, any final advice for tech leaders you have for our tech audience listening out there?
Absolutely. Again, yeah, build up your people management skills. Create lines of succession for your own team. Create the next future leaders. I feel like so many people in their careers, once they get to the point of leadership, struggle with that one concept to really create that next round of leaders. And that actually fails us because we can't scale infinitely. And then that fails the organization because the next person is going to make the same mistakes that the first person made when they joined because they didn't get the tools to succeed correctly. So love managing people.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. Stay bold and keep building, everybody. That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatafy Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.